something here.
Dude.
Nope. Pants. Kona.
King.
Kona. Hey everybody, welcome back to Books Yada Yada. I'm Dina and thank you so much for watching my channel. We had a pretty busy weekend here in the States and a lot's been going on. So I really haven't gotten around to making a video and it feels kind of weird. And the first book I'm going to go over is a book called The Tenant by Katrine Engberg. She is a Danish author and this is her debut novel, which is the very first novel in a detective series called the Kona and Verna, I believe. It's in Danish, even though I do have Danish heritage, I do not know how to pronounce any of these. And basically with this story, you have a detective, two detectives, they are partners, a male and female detective partnership, which was kind of cool to me because you don't see that very often. The male detective's name is Jeppe and the female detective's name is Annette. So Jeppe and Annette get called to a crime scene in Copenhagen, Denmark. And when they get there, they find a young woman who has been murdered. And she has had some intricate etchings, shall we say, carved into her face. So in trying to find out who is the murderer, you are delivered tons of red herrings in this book. If you like red herrings, you will love this book because it definitely throws you off into so many different directions. So you're mainly hearing this from the point of view of Jeppe. What I loved the most, I think, about this book is that it's a typical detective series, but yet it is not typical in the sense that you have a female and a male partnership. They are very, they've been working together as partners for like 8 years or something like that. And there's this great wit that goes on in banter and exchange between them often. So you get a lot of that humor in this book. And I'm going to read to you a couple of examples of it. So in this is like early on in the book. This is Jeppe and asks Annette a question. So Jeppe is thinking, now that they were seated across from each other, he noticed, much to his annoyance, how vigorous she looked compared to him. Her eyelids sported a fresh layer of blue, and she looked like someone who had sex, a hearty meal, and 8 hours of undisturbed sleep within the last 24 hours. It made him want to walk around the desk and tip her out of her chair. I just love that. It's so funny. So you're kind of getting like this unique partnership and their exchanges with each other and how they feel about each other. And on Annette's end of it, she gets angry with him. And so they have like a little bit of an argument. And Jeppe laughed wryly at his temperamental partner. What do you need, a chocolate bar or something? He says to her. And she says, yes, please. And would you ask me if I'm having my period as well? That would make things just about perfect. So it's just little exchanges like that that you get throughout the book that make it really funny. And, you know, again, there's that great Scandinavian wit and humor and sarcasm that's inserted into Jeppe and Annette's relationship as partners. Annette is very maternal towards Jeppe, where Jeppe is just very jaded, again, very kind of mad at the world right now because he's post like divorce. He's got a little bit of a painkiller addiction going on. And, you know, things have not gone so great for him. So in the midst of them trying to figure out what is going on and who murdered this poor girl, and there are some really great characters in this book. And one of them is a woman, an older woman who owns the apartment building where this young woman, Uli, was killed. And her name is Esther. And she's a novelist. She's a writer. She belongs to this writers group. And then they all become involved in the investigation as well. And she, Esther, has some really, really funny things and quirky things about her personality that are sprinkled into the book. And she gave the book a lot of entertainment value for sure. I felt that the ending was very satisfying because I did not expect or see it coming. And I love the atmosphere of the book. I love the way Copenhagen is described in the way Denmark is described. It really makes you definitely feel like you were there. So I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it was like the best book I read this year. If I were giving it a star rating, I would give it like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was fast paced. I haven't read a detective series in a while, but I'm a big fan of Henning Mankell, who wrote the Kurt Wallander series. So if you're familiar with that series of books, also if you've read any of Jo Nesbø's books, he's a Swedish author like Henning Mankell. If you like any of his books, you would probably like The Tenant as well. It's definitely in the same vein. So I'm definitely going to continue on when she comes out with the second book. Next book, this one, Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. Okay. This book is kind of one of those books where it took me a few days to process. And I'm just going to give you a brief rundown. I've already talked about these books in my November TBR, so I don't want to read the synopsises all over again. But basically what you're doing in this book is you're following a family called the Barretts, and their daughter has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. She's 14 years old. Her name is Marjorie, and she has a younger sister named Mary, who's 8 years old. And you're getting Mary's perspective throughout most of the book. So they're trying to figure out whether or not Marjorie has schizophrenia or if she's actually possessed. They call in a Catholic priest. The Catholic priest decides that yes, she's possessed. And somehow, somewhere along the way, the family is connected to a television program that decides, hey, offers this great opportunity to kind of solve their financial problems because they've been run into financial debt because of Marjorie and all of her medical bills. Hey, let's shoot a show. We'll do a show and we're going to document this whole possession and the exorcism of Marjorie. Basically, you're hearing Mary, the 8-year-old perspective during this whole transition of what's happening within the home while this television production crew comes in and is filming and is like living in the house basically, and they're just constantly surrounded by cameras. A lot of things go on in this book. The major issues that I had with it was the pacing. Now, you guys know, have ADHD. If the pacing is not fast enough for me, I will lose attention very quickly, like very, very quickly. And what's going on in this book is I'm going to mention a couple things that threw me off. I'm not going to say I hated the book. I didn't, okay? Hold on. All right, hold on. A couple of things that really kind of put a speed bump into the pacing for me was you have these blog posts inserted in here, okay? And the blog posts are actually they're written by Paul Tremblay, the author, but they are blog posts by someone named Karen Brissett. Now, if any of you are on Goodreads, you will likely know who Karen Brissett is. She's probably one of the most more prominent Goodreads reviewers, and she's also a blogger in real life, okay? So I don't know exactly what the details are of Paul Tremblay's relationship with Karen Brissett. I don't think that they're like close personal friends, but she's put into the book as a character, as this blogger, okay, which completely threw me off because I know who Karen is from following her reviews on Goodreads for years. And so every time those blog posts would appear in the book, and I hope I'm accounting this well enough and explaining this well enough that you can follow me here, is every time I would see those blog posts by Karen Brissett, I would see her picture. I would see the real Karen Brissett's picture pop up, like her profile picture pop up in my head, even though in the book, it's not the real Karen Brissett. It's somebody else, and I'm not going to tell you who it is. Okay, if you read it, you'll know who it is. So that was one thing that really messed up the pacing for me. I just like every time I would read one of her blog posts, I would just go, oh God, because they're really irritating, annoying blog posts, you guys, and they go on for pages. It's like this hipster doofus is writing these blog posts, and Karen Brissett is not a hipster doofus. I don't know her personally at all, but I don't think she's a hipster doofus. I really enjoy her reviews. And then Paul Tremblay also introduces another character in the book named Stephen Graham Jones. Okay, which completely threw me for a loop because most of us who are on booktube know who Stephen Graham Jones is. He wrote The Last Final Girls. He wrote recently The Only Good Indians, which came out, I believe, this year, last year, whatever. And he's a indigenous author and must be friends with Paul Tremblay because Paul Tremblay chose to feature him in the book not as Stephen Graham Jones himself, but used his name as a character in the book, portraying a teacher. Those things, when authors do stuff like that, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. For me, it just didn't really work very well because every time I would hear their names get mentioned, those real people's faces would pop up in my head. And you know what I mean? It would just kind of like, I would get distracted. Now, I don't know if that would distract you. It distracted me. The story overall is not a horror story. It's not. It's not scary. It wasn't a thriller at all. To me, this book was about what happens to a family when they just start to basically disintegrate, when their whole world disintegrates around them. What happens to each family member, to the father, to the mother, to Marjorie, the daughter who is possessed, and to Mary, the young daughter? What happens to this family when they feel like they are just losing everything? I read The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, and I'm kind of picking up on a theme with his books, which is family and whether or not a family can hold it together or whether or not they can't hold it together. At the cabin at the end of, in the cabin at the end of the world, that family held it together to the very bitter end as much as they possibly could. In this book, it goes in a completely different way, and you see how these different family members become possessed themselves, and not by any ghost, but by other things. So I think at the heart, at the core of this book, it's really a tale about a family and what happens to them when they are just consumed by all of these other ghosts. So that's the best I'm going to do with this book. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. That was my take on it. I didn't hate the book. It just didn't work for me in the sense of the pacing and the characters. So next book, Final Girls by Riley Sager. So in this book, you follow Quincy Carpenter, right? And she is a final girl. She has survived a mass killing, murder spree that happened years ago. And she has, in that process of surviving and being the lone survivor of a murder spree, she has become what's called a final girl. And it is basically a group of other women who have also survived mass murder situations. Now, these are different situations that they've been in, but they are considered final girls. So the unique thing about these final girls have never actually met each other. So as the book progresses, it's told in the point of view from Quincy's point of view primarily, and then you get sort of these point of views that take you back to her situation, which is at a place called Pine Cottage, where the mass murder happened, and where she survived. So you're getting these different entries from Pine Cottage and from Quincy's perspective. So as the story progresses, one of the final girls dies. And although she's never met that final girl, she does feel some empathy, some sympathy, some suspicion, basically. And in this process, she ends up meeting the other final girl, who is named Sam, and she Sam kind of comes out of nowhere and is becoming this influence on Quincy. Quincy, you have to know if you're going to read this book, she sort of has tried very hard after the experience at Pine Cottage to let go of it and to not be part of this final girl club, if you want to call it that. She's really tried to remove herself. So when she meets up with Sam, or Sam enters her life, enters the picture, Sam is really trying to sort of be like this influence on Quincy and making her feel like you're a survivor too, just like I am. You're strong. Although Quincy's kind of moved past everything and has a successful baking website. She's some sort of internet celebrity. She's lives with her boyfriend Jeff, who's a lawyer. She seems to be doing pretty well, right? And why does she need this Sam to come into her life and try to make her feel stronger? I didn't really get that too much. However, I have to say, a lot of people said I wasn't going to like this book. Well, I did. I liked it way better than The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I absolutely hated that book, and I had to skim to the end to find out what happened. So it was essentially a DNF. I loved Lock Every Door, however, by Riley Sager. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to give him another chance. This was his debut. So for a debut, I thought it was very good. I thought the hook was very good at the end. I actually didn't see that coming, which is surprising because I'm usually pretty good at figuring out the hooks, but this one, no. And it kind of crept up on me, and it was lying there sort of the whole time, but I didn't really see it coming. I don't want to spoil it, but it was surprising it was definitely surprising to me. So yeah, I actually did enjoy this book, and I wasn't crazy about any of the characters at all. That's one thing I can say is the main characters, she's kind of annoying. She's kind of like really tries to make her life picture perfect, but deep down inside, it's not, just like everybody else, right? And you kind of just get this feeling like she's not authentic, and that was the part of the book that really threw me off. Is I was really thinking that it was going to go in a completely different direction than it did, and it went in a much more obvious direction. Overall, I really did enjoy it. It was very fast paced, you guys. The chapters are wicked short, and I read through this in just maybe a couple of days. So Final Girls, Riley Sager, I liked it. So in other news, I'm actually doing my first buddy read on BookTube, you guys, and it is with the Hungry Bookworm, and she's awesome. I'm going to post the link to her channel down in the description box. I love her channel. She's fantastic. And so we're reading The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This book is dark academia. It was written in 1992. I flew through this book completely, has swallowed me whole. I finished it last night, and I will talk about this book later on when her and I have finished it. She's finished it, and we've exchanged different thoughts and ideas about it. But so doing a buddy read is really cool because it's just a lot of fun to, we're in this situation right now where we're not in any book clubs as far as going to someone's house or going to the library and being like physically in a book club. So doing it virtually is a lot of fun. So that's it for today. So let me know how you're doing. Have you had a crazy week like me? You feel like you're just trying to catch up on stuff and it's just like not happening? I don't know. What are you reading right now? Thank you so much for watching. There are some people that I'm going to give shout outs to in my next video. So you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you the next time.